is Bring Your Own Brand. I am excited about today's show. Here's why. I love to get dressed up and I love to go to events. And today's show is about weddings because the wedding industry, the event industry touches so many different businesses. So I'm thrilled to bring on our guest for today. So Tonya Alita is a serial entrepreneur turned life and business coach, podcast host, and author. She lives in Philadelphia area in a fixer-upper with her daughter, the cat Caramel, and dog Macchiato. Welcome to the show, Tonya.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me, did I mess up on your first or last name?
Not at all. It was perfect, Natalia.
Okay, I want to make sure that I pronounce everything correctly because there's, what's interesting. I read somewhere that the person's name is the dearest sort of sound for everybody. Do you agree with that? Because it's not like we get to pick our name. What
right, exactly.
on that?
I love that. I think that was Dale Carnegie, if I remember correctly, and just that idea of always being able to recognize our value in someone else saying our name. I think it's a really interesting theory.
So, but do you feel like we are honoring the person's name, or we personing the person's parents, really? Because it's the parents that have sort of created the name.
Right. I think that we, personally anyway, I feel like when we grow up and kind of always have that identity to our name, it gets wrapped all together. But then you also think about how many people have chosen a different name. Clearly that was not the case for them. So it's a really interesting conversation, especially in this day and age when people are able to use their own choice much more than whatever they were given from their family.
Right. And speaking of names, I know, so your superpower is organizing events. I know you've done a lot of incredible stuff, but your superpower is organizing events. And, when we see those wedding invitations come in, the names are important I love wedding invitations and I love weddings and I love events. And on the show today, we will be sharing about the different pivots that you have made, and then give some advice to other companies that are connected to the event industry and the wedding industry, so that the listeners will have great takeaways from the show. So I'm really excited. So the wedding industry, the events industry, we did some interviews already, and it's incredible. That is one of those industries that really had to pivot and go almost 100% digital, right?
Very close to it. I think as close as any of us ever wanted to come, and frankly, we never wanted to get this close. It's been fascinating within our industry specifically, as you mentioned, because weddings and events touch so many other aspects of hospitality and tourism, within each different market. But then on top of that, if you break each wedding down, you're looking at, like you mentioned, stationery. So you're looking at stationery designers, stationery printers, you're looking at signage, you're looking at a way to track RSVPs. So you're looking at the post office or tracking them online. That's just communicating about the wedding and getting responses back again. We haven't even touched, 90% of the other vendors that are all involved.
Yeah, so which is actually something that I wanted to ask you. So when we're thinking about the wedding, and why I'm so excited about today's show is actually next week is my 20th wedding anniversary, and I'm very fortunate to be married to the love of, thank you so much, to the love of my life, and he's a wonderful guy, and 20 years together. So yeah, I'm thrilled to dive into all the beauty and for a lot of people the stress. So when we plan our wedding, we actually got married in Disney World, and it was really a very small wedding. I'm from Russia originally, and I was brand new in the country, and I didn't know a lot of people. So my husband was so sweet, and he said to me, we are going to make it really comfortable for you. I don't want to invite two to 300 of business associates, that the people who you don't know. We're just going to make it comfortable. So our wedding was only 16 people, and we got married in Disney World at the wedding pavilion, and it was so lovely, and it was black tie, and everybody looked good. And you know, it's nice to relive some of these great memories 20 years later. So I'm super excited about celebrating next week. But so when we think about wedding industry, I know for us, because we did it with Disney, we had the wedding planner there, and they sort of made it all very easy for us. And I'm sure you've dealt with students. But how many businesses can you go into, just kind of covering how many businesses are involved into creating that special day for people?
Sure, I'd be happy to. If we kind of reverse engineer, if you will, the wedding day itself, and you think about everything or everyone that is going to be a part of that day from a business perspective, I feel like the very quick ones to identify are photographer, filmmaker, florist, your planner, your venue. You're most likely going to have one for your ceremony and one for your reception, unless you choose a space that can do both. Transportation, both for you and your wedding party, and also your guests, hotel for your guests to stay at, the hair and makeup team that's going to take care of you and your wedding party. We mentioned stationery earlier. That will carry over into the wedding day too when it comes to programs or menus or escort cards. Linens, lighting, entertainment, band, DJ, let's see. I feel like I'm missing somebody.
I'm running out of hands.
Catering. Catering, of course, we need to feed everybody. Yeah, so I feel like sometimes the list is endless.
Yes, isn't that incredible how there's so much coordination that goes into creating one really special day for people that hopefully they'll remember for the rest of their lives, and you know, being able to share those memories with their kids and grandkids down the road. So tell me, how did you get started in the event industry, and would you share and the pivots that you personally with your business had to make during the pandemic to maintain the success, to keep that income coming in?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's so funny because we started this conversation talking about the power of names. Arabella is the name of my wedding planning company. It's also the name of my grandmother's great-grandmother. So I'm kind of the genealogy nerd in the family. It's so much fun. There was a love letter that was written during the Civil War, and it started with "My dearest Arabella." And at that point, I was like, well, I think the legacy of a love story just wrote itself. And that was something so exciting for me to be able to really, you know, kind of tap into from a family heritage side. Although I will say I've never seen the guy in the family tree. So I don't know what the story is, and I need to do a little bit more digging. But really just, you know, my imagination was caught up in that idea, and the brand was chosen. So I know branding is definitely a big piece of how we are showing up in the world in terms of business owners. So that was a really important piece for me. And, you know, I had been doing weddings already before then, but when we talk about important pivot points, choosing that name instead of my previous business name, that was definitely a pretty significant pivot during the course of my career in weddings. And it's been, what, 24, 25? It's been a long time. It's been a lot of years now.
Some numbers are okay not to mention, right?
Right? Yeah. It's the Italian saying that these are the things we don't count: the years, the glasses of wine, and the lovers. We don't count those things. We just enjoy them.
Oh my! I love that. You know, it's funny about talking about not numbers and not counting. I've seen some things circulating on Facebook that today's year is not going to be added to anybody's, this year, 2020, is not going to be added to anybody's age. So we're just
I think that's a very fair trade-off. I think we're still owed a little bit, you know, to balance off. And to that end, you know, the kinds of changes that we've had to make within an industry. I mean, just this week alone, this week or last week, honestly, all the days run together at this point. Here in Pennsylvania, where I'm based, our governor made an announcement that directly impacted live events. And in many cases, there were several events that needed to do a very quick pivot because we were limited to 25 people indoors and 150 outdoors. So, you know, if you had a wedding that was planned for that weekend, you have to make a very sudden, very intense change. And I feel like right now, especially so many of the couples that are getting married, they've already changed their expectations multiple times over. So in order to be able to stay in compliance and to take the best care possible that we can of our guests, there's a lot that's required right now that was not required for the average couple getting married, this time last year.
Absolutely, I hear you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it just like for us in the restaurant industry, it's so important for anybody who is involved in the wedding to stay in touch with the guidelines and the regulations that are coming down that seem to be changing a lot. So that's why it's that much more important is to have a communication platform for whether your business is tied to the event management or to anything. We always talk about communication. What platforms do you use to communicate with the businesses that you work with on coordinating a wedding?
Well, I have to be honest, right now, it's as simple as my cell phone and a lot of text messages going back and forth. With the vendors that I'm working with on events right now, we are in near constant conversation because things are changing so quickly, and every decision that comes down affects multiple other decisions. So we really have a domino effect to look at. In terms of guest communication, one of the things I've been recommending for couples is to use a wedding website or some other sort of asynchronous communication style so that there is one place for the couple to make any updates or changes, and they then don't have to field dozens and dozens of phone calls or, the mother of the bride doing so, but they can communicate as they have new information, and then the guests have the responsibility of going to the website and checking. I mean, you've got the whole family telephone chart. That does help, especially in times like this. But to make it easy on the couple, as easy as possible, having one place that they can update without needing to, be responsible for the back and forth, I think is really helpful for people right now.
Right. So this is interesting because I feel like the amount of stress, not only on the event organizers and all the other businesses that are connected, but it's part of your job as the event organizer is to provide that next level of customer service in communication and keeping the family calm. How do you do that? Is there any sort of communication tricks? So I know that you had just mentioned communicating through a certain website. So do you try to only relay the necessary information to the client?
It really depends on the event itself, on the clients, on their personal preferences in terms of communication. I was kind of smiling a bit when you asked, because I think a lot of it comes down to what I've learned as a human being and as a business owner, and in sharpening my own communication tools as well as my own self-care. All of those things factor into how well I'm able to take care of my clients. So, it's not, it used to be more about, making them happy at all costs, especially when I was younger. That changed over the years. And it's a lot more about thorough communication, about setting expectations, and recognizing, especially in times like this, there's so much that comes to the table in planning a wedding and then actually being able to pull it off, to execute it. But all of the vendors that are in the wedding industry, I don't know a single one who aren't here because they don't love it. Like you can't do weddings if you don't love weddings. Trust me, I have enough friends in the events industry who did one season in the wedding side, and they're like, and I'm done. If you need me, I'll be over here in corporate. Like, they want nothing more to do with it. So I think to kind of remember at the core of it all that we really are all in this together. We are all doing the best we can with the information we have in this exact moment. And if we get new information, we'll make a new decision. And just really having that kind of foundation of trust and respect and clarity for yourself, as well as the other professionals you're working with and your clients, I think that helps a lot, to relieve some of the tension in navigating this.
I think that you bring up a really good point with setting expectations, because, you know, there's a big difference in delivering, you know, one small project to your customer. I don't know, creating a PDF or something, you know what I mean? Like the level of expectation of that, which is a tiny project, versus coordinating, you know, 15 to 20 different businesses together to make that one event special. So but it's nice to hear, have the rooms, have the customers, have they been more accepting of the pivots and changes that are happening right now?
Everyone that I'm fortunate to work with, yes. But I'll also say that I've gotten very picky about who I work with over the years.
Okay.
And I can kind of detect the drama, you know, a long ways away. And I choose not to work with those who have a lack of respect for other humans. And it's pretty rampant in the wedding industry. I think especially, you know, as recently as last year, we saw a really high uptick in what I would kind of refer to as like the high maintenance type of personality. I think when you have that lack of perspective and the idea that, you know, this is all about my day, or, you know, kind of falling into those kinds of programming, it really skews the possibility of having a balanced experience. So as much as it is, I think, about owning the communication process, setting the expectations, being very transparent when things are not possible, or looking for new alternative ways to make something happen, I think it also comes down into the idea of, you know, having a really grounded conversation with your clients to see where they really are and if their expectations are even possible to achieve, or if they're just never going to be happy no matter what you do.
Right. That's a great point. I want to talk about, so we have met that there's a lot of different industries that are tied into creating a wedding. So what advice would you give to musicians, to caterers, to florists, to these businesses? How can they maintain that sense of, because we know that right now a lot of people are not being able to, you know, provide their services for these events. Do you have any sort of words of hope, words of wisdom, anything that they can be doing to keep in touch with event planners? Like, what can all of these supporting businesses do?
Absolutely. I think first, you know, just again, the idea that we're all in this together, and to recognize that sometimes, I think, especially on a professional side, we tend to isolate ourselves and to not show the dirty laundry, you know, so to speak, and make everyone think that we're just fine and we've got everything all figured out, because heaven forbid we would let anyone know that we're stressed or we're struggling or we're fearful. And I think this is a beautiful time in our industry to be able to really be transparent, not only with each other and to deepen those relationships, but also with our clients. Not to the point where you're putting your fear on them. We are still the professionals. We do still have to kind of keep things together. But at the same time, I think being willing to be human in community is incredibly helpful right now. And I think too, if ever there was a moment where our clients were willing to see beyond the contract or the expectation or the, you know, the check that they're sending, now is the time to be able to have that conversation with people and to be more, you know, honest about, you know, how things are set up. For example, one of the things that we come into pretty often is this idea that, yes, we're selling our service, but we're also selling a specific date for that service to be rendered. And a lot of times couples don't understand that. They think, you know, well, I booked you as my photographer, so therefore whatever day I'm going to be getting married, you're the one who's supposed to be shooting my wedding. Not necessarily. The contract was for my services on that day. If your venue is not open yet, if you can't have the number of people you were planning on, you know, any of those types of things that would change the date, that contract is no longer valid. And most vendors will work endlessly to try to get a new date together that everybody can, you know, kind of move forward as much as possible. But it's taken a long time, I think, for the couples and the families to understand the intricacy. It's not just the service for those of us that are there on the wedding day, you're also buying the day. That's why we're having a big issue with all the 2020 rescheduling and now trying to book new dates in 2021. People don't understand why venues are only offering a weekday wedding. It's because there's no days left.
Yes, I completely understand, and thank you so much for giving so much clarity and explanation. So it really is about, keeping our expectations realistic and being able to adjust, and with the understanding that the day will still be beautiful and it'll still be special enough. So let's say I am a musician or a DJ service that I provide. So I'm guessing that some of the weddings are going virtual, probably, right? Because the events are minimal. So how can I continue to get hired if I'm a musician? Let's say we'll just focus on one thing at a time. How can I continue to get hired, even if it's virtual?
And of course,
a virtual event?
You had to pick the musician. That's one of the hardest ones right now. I think the first thing I would say is to stay in touch with your fellow vendors, because there may be opportunities that you may not be aware of, but they are. So, for example, I mentioned earlier the idea of the cap in Pennsylvania, about 25 indoors indoors or 150 outdoors. Right. So there's still quite a bit that can happen. And, we were doing micro weddings well before COVID because people were choosing it. So, for example, even at our 18-person wedding downtown Philadelphia, we still had 3 different musicians involved during the course of the day. So there is still work to be had. You just have to make it be a little, I was going to say scrappier, a little bit more creative about staying in touch and, being able to find those opportunities. But when you cross over from, kind of the in-person component to the virtual component, there are still opportunities there. And if you think about it from a holistic perspective as events are concerned, it's not just the wedding industry, it's also events, conferences, trade shows, retreats, any of these types of things. There's always opportunities to enhance an experience, whether we are together in person or we're virtual. We just have to really reimagine things, and I think sometimes kind of take the blinders off. This is the way we've always done things, therefore this is the way we need to find to make it work. That doesn't apply anymore. Now's the time to get creative, and maybe it's the time to try something completely new that no one in your industry is doing yet. This is the time to experiment and see what happens.
Although you just bring up so many great points. Just because things have been done a certain way before in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't experiment or you can't come up with, with new ideas, with new suggestions. So are there, I know you had mentioned staying in touch with all the vendors. So do you think that it would make sense for the vendors that have done weddings before, who are still looking to do weddings, to continue to make a list actually of different catering services, anybody that they can think of that would be involved in the wedding, or contact wedding planners? But are there any, would you recommend that they try to go, because right now there are no networking events that are happening in person. So would you recommend that they go to online networking events? Are there different Facebook groups that exist for this industry? Is there anything like that? How can they connect more effectively?
Absolutely. I tend to be one that I'm very choosy about where I spend my energy, even in networking, because I think sometimes, especially in this kind of environment when things are very stressful, the mood can change very quickly. And when you are looking to connect and you're looking to expand, if you're in an environment that is only ever going to find fault with what's going on, or going to shoot down ideas before you have a chance to think them through, or any of those kinds of things, those are the type of pitfalls I think that you really need to be very careful of, especially in an online environment, if you don't have positive people at home, because we're not seeing everybody, out in events anymore. So really, watching the energy, I think, is one of the first things I would say, just to make sure that it aligns with who you are and who you are wanting to become, in your new pivot, whatever that might look like. So yeah, hitting the Rolodex. And for those of you that are younger than me, that was a reference to a big old card deck that we used to carry around with all the business cards. My very first internship was with a wedding planner who was a bit older than I am. And this was, I don't know, my sophomore year in college. It must have been because I started my company when I was a junior in college. So this was an internship I fought for, I begged for. It lasted for 4 hours because I went to, she had her office out of her home, as many of us do, and she had the old school Rolodex on the corner of this beautiful little antique secretary. She thought for sure that I was going to grab that Rolodex and run out the door. And so my internship lasted a whopping 4 hours. So I do have a very close affection with that word. But yeah, I mean, now is the time to I was going to say work your network, not in like the sleazy, kind of way, but really, who do you know? Who have you always wanted to work with that you haven't had the opportunity to before? What are the businesses that you really respect and admire in your area? Now is a great time to be able to, open new doors and develop relationships further than what they've been before.
And I like what you say about opening new doors, because it feels like the possibility that can come out of reaching out to a business that you have never reached out before, you just never know. And to create those very authentic kind of relationships, just like, hey, we're all in the same boat. How are you doing? I just wanted to make sure. And always, whenever I found that it very helpful for myself is whenever I reach out to different businesses, what can I do for you? Is there anybody that I can connect you with? I always start to think it's not about just me pitching what I want to do, like whatever business that, I'm talking about it at the time, but make it, whenever you reach out to somebody, make it like, look, we're all in this together. Let's help each other out. And that's one of the things that what the show is about is we come together with different business owners from different parts of the country, and we together we come up with different ideas and different solutions of how to help each other. We're not here to pitch our services. We are having a conversation where we share solid things that business owners can do to have more connections and to have more authenticity. I know there's always a talk about the word that, especially, I know you and I have been in the online world for a long time, but that authenticity, maybe share a little bit more about yourself. Maybe share the reason why you started a business, especially with the wedding industry. Maybe share why you want to bring joy to people's lives and to people's faces, and for something to create special memories. I know that you had mentioned about that. And it's so important. And I want to thank you so much. Is there anything else? Is there one piece of advice that you want to share with business owners? What can they do today, right after they finish listening to the show? What is the number one thing that they should focus on doing right now?
Well, ironically enough, I'm going to break the rules, and I'm going to say two, because one of the first things I was going to say was be willing to break the rules. And I think especially in the wedding industry, when, we can be very steeped in tradition and, this is the timeline and this is the protocol. Yes. And a lot of that's not relevant right now. So be willing to break the rules, be willing to try something new. And to that end specifically, I would even say, is there a way to be able to help your clients, help your couples that may not necessarily be dependent on you? We've been working on this for the last 2 years, well before COVID was on anyone's horizon, but we are just about ready to launch Wedding Planning DIY. And it's teaching couples how to get married without having a planner, because frankly, not everyone can afford that. That isn't in everyone's game plan. So everyone might not need, every wedding may not need a planner, but every wedding needs a plan. And that's relevant now, even outside of, our traditional wedding goals. So maybe there are ways, thinking again specifically within the wedding and event industry, is there a way that you can help your couples or help your clients that isn't dependent on you operating your business the way that you used to? I think sometimes we forget how much we know, and especially those of us that have been around the block for a while, it comes second nature to us. So we forget how much information the experience has given us. That's really valuable information for people right now. So how can we leverage that?
That's super helpful. I know you have launched weddingplanningdiy.com, and it's very affordable, right? It's a very affordable package for people, and it's almost like a wedding planner in a box, and you can download it and log in and and have it all laid out, because I know that would take a lot of stress off the couples.
Right. Well, and just being able to make it even more accessible, as much as we can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tonya. I really love always talking to you. We can talk for hours, and you have so much
easily
to share. Thank you. Yes, thank you. You have so much experience, and that's what the show is about. BYOB, bring your own business, build your own brand. I'm very grateful to our guest for today, and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Natalia Levy. Thank you for watching.
Steaks Glam Bar is an award-winning family-owned restaurant with 2 locations in Florida's Gulf Coast, Lakewood Ranch and St. Armand Circle. A New York-style Italian clam bar, Steaks offers fresh house-made pasta with homemade marinara sauce that runs on 3 speeds, sweet, medium, and hot. A wide variety of delicious fresh seafood, craft cocktails, all joyfully served in Prohibition-style decor, have made Steaks Glam Bar a favorite destination for locals and visitors alike. Our unique approach to accommodating guests with dietary restrictions has made Steaks one of the favorites among doctors and health enthusiasts. Bring your family and friends to Steaks today or get takeout. Our teams are always happy to welcome you.
Thank you for tuning in to BYOB. Join us next time for a fresh perspective and innovative strategies to building your own business. If you are a successful business owner with tips to help or would like more information from our hosts or guests, please contact us at 866-224-5422. See you next time.